To God be the glory. Good morning. I'm Deacon Melvin McCullough, Second Missionary Baptist Church here in Oceanside, California. My pastor is Reverend Charles E. Price. And we're here for me to deal with the Sunday school lesson. This lesson is lesson 4 in a series of lessons that we have did from the Old Testament book of 1 Samuel. We began with Samuel being the leader, and as you recall, if he was with us, under Samuel's leadership, the people put away idol gods. They got rid of Balaam and Ashtaroth and really served the Lord. But if our lesson 2, we discover that Samuel became old, and once he became old, he really wanted his sons to take over leadership, but his sons did not walk as he did after God. So the people came forward to Samuel and demanded a king. And once they had demanded a king, Samuel really was not that happy about it, but he did, like all good godly men, he went talk to God about it, and God told Samuel, Samuel, relax yourself. They really not rejecting you, they are rejecting me. With that, Samuel went and brought forth Saul. Saul, whose name is asked for, or some say demanded. Either way is saying that it wasn't God, it was the people who asked for one, so God gave them one. He became the first king of Israel, and that brings us pretty down to our, after Saul is anointed king, our lesson today is Saul's disobedience under pressure, taken from the 13th chapter, 5 through 14 of 1 Samuel. Now, I'm really not going to have time to deal with the verses down below, but I would say read straight through. Don't just jump in there and start in the middle at the Sunday school lesson. But I need at least reach verses 2 and 3 to give contents and context to verse 5. And verse 2 tells us that right after Saul became king, he put together an army of 3,000 men. He put 2,000 up under his command and 1,000 up under Jonathan's command. Jonathan really was his number one son. And then after he had put those in, he tells everybody else, go to your tents, go home. Then we will discover that Jonathan went and attacked an outpost, or garrison, I think is what scripture says, of the Philistines. But the amazing thing that after that, the Philistines heard about it. Depends on which version of scripture you read, and it will say that it was a stench in their nostrils, it was an abomination. In short, it made them mad. And they got mad, but Saul, and this really sort of began to show us some of the character of Saul. Saul goes forth and blows the trumpet, implying that he had the victory because the trumpet blower should have been the one that had the victory, and the victory really was Jonathan. But Saul came forth and did all that and went told all the people. But it was the garrison of the Philistines, and when we get down to our lesson, in verse 5 of our lesson, it says, the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Saul. And I should caution you again. If you're a King James reader, and I am, it will tell you that he had 30,000 chariots. If you read some of the other versions and some of the subtours, they says 3,000. They make that contention up on this that the terrain wouldn't have held 30,000. It's not the point, and don't get caught up in it. The point is that he had a far superior army to Saul. Now, scripture, just to stay with where we were at, it said he had 30,000 chariots, he had 6,000 horsemen, he had peoples like the grains of sand on the ocean beach. And if you go back up to what we said in verse 2, it says Saul had 3,000. And so we got 3,000 against all of these. And this, when we get down to it, and when we look at it, it says that they took all these people and they came up and pitched in Mishah. When they pitched in Mishah between Bethon, it's what he's telling us that the Philistines became upset and unhappy, and they considered the attack on their garrison as an attack of war. And they were ready to counter. They bring all these men forward and camped right at Saul's doorstep in Michmash. And then we see where he looks at them in his doorstep and says, in verse 6 says, when Israel saw that the men were in a strait, for the peoples were distressed. The peoples look out and you see all those chariots. If you get some kind of picture, it's like looking out at a battalion of tanks and you don't have any. They look out and see all of this coming, and they really began to hide themselves in caves and thickets and high places and pits. I want to say something here. When Israel saw that they was in a critical condition, they went and hid. This is the time that they really should have went on their knees and prayed. You're a child, you don't run and hide just because pressure comes. Because I'm going to tell you, if you live, pressure will come. You will live on the mountain, but you will live in the valley. And instead of running and hiding, turn to the Lord when it comes. And I'm going to say this, that this is an adult class, and every adult is a leader on this journey. Someone is watching each and every one of us. So as you're a leader, whether you're a leader of one or a leader of many, the rules is the same. And the rule says, if my people, most of us know that verse. He says, if that are called by my name, would just humble themselves and pray and seek me. You don't go have to go seeking into the hills, seeking into the pits, hiding up under the bed. He just says, seek me and humble themselves and pray. I'll take care of the land. I'll take care of them. So me and you got to remember in bad times and good times, and let me say this too, there is never no circumstance that justifies disobeying God. Here our lesson is Saul disobeys under pressure. Doesn't matter. When disobey, you disobey. When we look at him and he says that after they did this, we look at verse 7 and it says some of the Hebrews after this time went to Jordan. And then it says, as for Saul, and all the peoples following him trembled. Me and you are never any better, stronger than our leader. When our leader gets upset, we get upset. When the leader tells us, oh man, it's done, we're pretty much done. But me and you need always look at God. When we look at this now, the matter is getting a little bit worse. It's getting worse for Saul now, and the people with Saul is beginning to run and hide. Every time he hold roll call, he have less and less. So when you get to verse number 9, where he really becomes disobedient, in verse number 9, Saul Saul says, bring hither a burnt offering and a peace offering, and to offer the burnt offering. I'm going to tell you, Saul didn't seem to understand the fact that he knew that he needed the Lord and that a burnt offering was required. He seemed to understood that. So he said, but he did not make that, what I want to try to say is, that did not make it right for him to do wrong. Matter of fact, it's bad to know right and do wrong. And Saul knew what was required. He knew right, but did wrong. And it tells not only did he do wrong, but he says in 10, as it came to pass that as soon as he had made an offering, Samuel shows up. We all sing the old song, Wait on the Lord. We say he may not come when we want it, but he's always right on time. So what we were implying in that song, don't give up, hang on in there just a little bit longer till your change comes. Don't give up on him. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. But when we look at it, after he done did that, Samuel shows up, and it says Saul went out to greet him. He goes out to greet Samuel as though everything is cool. Man, you hear no problem, we can take it, you can take it back now. I done took care of the offering. And that we have a tendency to do that. And really, sometime in our heart, we don't realize how dangerous we are when we are disobedient to God. We did the disobedient, and everything looked cool. Everybody took of the burnt offering, and everybody was happy and content. And then come the man of God. And Samuel says in verse 11, what has he done? That's one of those rhetorical questions. Samuel knew well what he had done, and he knew that Saul knew well what he had done. And look at verse 11 at Saul's answer. Because I saw that the people were scattering from me, and thou came not when thou had within the time appointed up above. He told him he'd be back in 7 days. And the Philistines are gathering down there to attack. Therefore said I, the Philistine will come down upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication unto the Lord. I forced myself. I'm going to tell you, the only person that makes you do wrong is you. You can say, I forced, I had no other choice, it was the best solution to the problem, but wrong is still just wrong, and when you're going against God's will, excuses are just excuses. He says, I forced myself, therefore, and offered a burnt offering. I don't have time to talk about the burnt offering, but the burnt offering really, when you go back and talk about it earlier, it was a symbolic of Jesus ascending up. They burnt the whole offering, and the smoke and everything went up as an example of Jesus after his crucifixion ascending. It also represented complete obedience and dedication to the Lord. You gave it all. The burnt offering was one of the offerings where you burnt the whole thing, which means that Lord, I gave you my all. But there were some rules with this burnt offering on who could make the offering. And it did not include the king. But when I look at verse 12, Samuel asked him, what have you done? The answer that is applied, that Saul knew better. And Saul thought he not only had one good reason, he had three. He said, my reason for disobeying, one, my peoples were scattering. I'm already short, and I'm getting shorter every day. So I had to do something. The Philistines is camping down at base camp and subject to take off and attack at any time. That put a little bit more pressure on me, and you didn't show up on time. I'm telling you, rationalization works with man, it don't work with God. He was willing, here you look at Saul, he's willing to blame anybody and everything but Saul. He even went so far as to say, I was forced to do it. But when we get to verse 13, it says, and Samuel says to Saul, thou hast done foolish. Man, you really done messed up. What he says, thou hast not kept the commandments of the Lord thy God. We need to think on that. There's, people can curse you and do a lot of stuff to you, but they can't say nothing to a Christian that is worse than you have not been obedient to the Lord thy God. And when he tells him that, thou hast done foolishly. But we have to keep his, but look what he says. But from now, I'm looking at the bottom part of 13. For now, would the Lord have established kingdom over Israel forever? He said, he's going to make you king, but you're going to get foolish. You're going to messed up. When he done called you out and told you what to do, you really done messed up. He was going, I want to read back where it says, sort of paraphrase back in 1 Samuel 10, 14, and 15. It says what I was saying. He told him, if he and the people would obey God, they would be blessed. But he put that word but there. But if not, you shall be judged. I just want to finish this up, says that leaders above all must obey God. And I'm going to add that by saying what the world needs today is leaders who's being led by God. Don't get me wrong when I say that, because I'm going to tell you truthfully, we're not going to get a leader that is going to 100% obey God and be led by God until Christ returns. That's man, and he asked man, is there any righteous? And the answer was no, not one. So if you're thinking about a leader, but the point is, as a leader up under pressure, when you do wrong, you confess up. When you do wrong, you turn to God and say, Lord, here I am, your humble servant, and you know me, I done messed up. But we need to do that. But until that time, me and you should do our best to be obedient to his will and to his way. God bless you.